everybody, what's going on, and welcome to GNR Central. And you guys may have noticed on my channel I'm still talking a little bit about ACDC since we don't know what's going on with Axl and the band and whether he's still involved with the band or not. But there was a news story that broke yesterday that ACDC, we know there's rumors dating back to September of last year that ACDC was in the studio in Vancouver, Canada. But what happened recently is the band's longtime engineer Mike Fraser was being interviewed on a podcast, and he did confirm that something was being done in the studio with the band. So speculation began last year after photographs of various members were seen in the vicinity of the warehouse studios in Vancouver where they've recorded in the past. Now, based on the photographs, the lineup, at least of the band at that time when the photographs were taken, appeared to include Angus Young, Brian Johnson, who appeared to be back, drummer Phil Rudd, who had left the band previously, and bassist Cliff Williams. Now, it was reported that Angus's nephew, Stevie Young, was thought to have basically also worked with the band, replacing his uncle, the late Malcolm Young, as he had since 2016. So Mike Fraser was asked about the rumors of a new AC/DC album, and in a recent interview on Mastering Music, Mastering Life, Fraser replied saying, "Well, yeah, I could say that we've been in the studio doing something. What's come of that, I can't discuss yet." He was asked if Brian Johnson was singing. He said, "I think so," with a laugh. Now, you guys can watch the entire interview at the link below. And the discussions of a new AC/DC album happen around 37 minutes into the podcast. Now, more fuel was thrown on the fire when earlier this year, a guy posted a photo of himself at the hotel where Brian Johnson and Cliff Williams were staying. I think he's a trainer at the gym, or maybe he just attends the gym, and he ran into these guys. And he posted this photo on Instagram, claiming it was from late last year. Now, I want to talk about something else that's related to the AC/DC news. So I was listening to Blowhard Eddie Trunk. He was... somebody posted a clip of his show from earlier this week. Eddie was talking all about Aerosmith's residency in Vegas, which I'm so jealous I'm not in Vegas to watch that, and the Van Halen reunion, and then AC/DC came up, and at least according to Eddie Trunk, I haven't heard this elsewhere, but Eddie claims, according to his sources, that AC/DC is not only going to be recording a new record, they're also going to be touring with Brian, which I don't believe that for a second. I think if the band's going to tour, then there's a good possibility maybe Axl will be touring with them. And if they do hit the road again, is bassist Cliff Williams going to join the band, or is he going to leave? Because I thought being on the road was one of the reasons why he quit the band towards the end of their last tour. And then we had a report from earlier this year, from February, that the new AC/DC album was not only finished, but it's going to feature Malcolm Young's riffs. So, according to the report, radio personality Eddie Trunk had discussed at the time his knowledge of AC/DC's current endeavors with a listener on his Sirius XM volume show, stating that he has a very well-placed, reliable source who updated him on the band, saying, "He told me to his knowledge the album is like you said, done, and they went to the studio in Canada and made the record." He says, Trunk then addressed the speculation of the record implementing Malcolm Young's riffs as being true and refers to it as a tribute to the guitarist. He continued by saying Malcolm had a bunch of stuff recorded that they worked off and sort of incorporated it into the record. Trunk also added that the source told him that he does not have any further details about how and when they will go about releasing it. However, as of now, there were no plans to tour, but that's what he said in February. He's changed his tune as of recently. So keeping with the AC/DC news, so there was an interviewer with comedian Jim Breuer on Brando's Appetite for Distortion podcast, and he revealed on the interview that he is not a fan of the Axl Rose-fronted AC/DC, and here's what he had to say. And it's also important to note he's pretty good friends and close friends with Brian Johnson. He said, "If Brian is involved, I'm good. I haven't bought Axl yet. I'd like to see Dave Grohl go on tour with AC/DC. I would enjoy that more. Not that he needs to, not that he needs to be the new frontman. It's just like, hey, it's an honor of doing AC/DC songs. I'm Dave Grohl. You know I'm a rock guy. I love them, and I'm going to tour for I'm going on tour for 8 cities. I would pay to see that." Axl and everyone said to give it a shot. If he's recording and Axl is recording, listen, if you treat Brian with respect, I'm in. I didn't like the respect that was given to Brian in the last go-around. And as a lifelong AC/DC fan, Breuer said he is unable to accept Axl fronting the group, and even went as far to say that the band is done. He didn't condemn the Guns N' Roses main man, shrugging his shoulders and simply summing up that Axl's work basically does not cut it for him personally. Rather than watch the band try to soldier on, losing critical members in recent years, he suggested an alternative route for Angus Young to continue scratching his touring itch. Turning now to some Guns N' Roses news. So this is the announcement you guys have all been waiting for. So Del James revealed earlier this week on Twitter on Instagram that he got hitched to his longtime girlfriend. I guess they went to a place in LA called Same Day Marriage, and he posted a couple photos there with his bride. And this is a news story I'm also going to cover tomorrow, but I'll just do it here in case you guys have stayed this long with the video. So Duff McKagan gave a performance on April 4th at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles. And you guys may not know this, but Kevin actually went to the show, and he said they tried to discourage people from filming a lot of it. But he did say that Duff did a performance with Shooter Jennings Band, and then he also told stories in between. And one of the stories he told was that, as you guys know, Guns N' Roses have been covering Black Hole Sun as part of their set list since May of 2017 when Chris Cornell tragically passed away. And he said that originally the band was going to cover the song even before Chris Cornell passed away. It just so happened that, strangely enough, Axl brought up the song and wanting to play it, and then later that night they heard that Chris Cornell had passed away. So I don't know if I believe that story. Like, I'm not saying that he didn't tell it. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. I mean, some of Duff's stories in the past have been pretty questionable, like how The Simpsons named the beer after him, or how he was one of the last people to see Kurt Cobain, or how he was the last person to see Philip Seymour Hoffman. And so I find that kind of a huge coincidence. It's kind of like when Howard Stern told the story of how he wanted to call Robin Williams and apologize for how he behaved in the past, and then it was the same day that Robin Williams had died. And so I don't know, I question that story, but let's talk about what he discussed at that April 4th performance at the Grammy Museum. So he talked a bit about his lyrical role models, which Axl's talked a lot about. He's talked about Bernie Taupin being one of his biggest influences as a songwriter. But Duff said, I think the biggest thing that's affected me lyric writing wise is reading Cormac McCarthy and Ernest Hemingway, just the scarcity of words and picking the right word. I read lines of Cormac's, you just read a sentence and I started crying. That's very punk rock, Duff. The subject and the economy of the words he used and how he used them. Writing my first book, I would try to aspire to that benchmark. Like, can I get one sentence like Cormac? Just effing one. I really tried to write up to the standard of authors I read. Writing lyrics for the record, I especially used a lot of we because the songs are about us, not me, just by myself. I really wanted every word to be exactly the right word. Don't rhyme fire with desire. Don't effing do it. Don't do it, Duff went on to say. Now, Duff's first book is excellent. I love the first book that he wrote. The second book I was pretty disappointed with, but I still enjoyed it, but just not as much as the first one. He also talked on whether an artist has a responsibility to address the ills of society and, of course, being political. So Duff said there's a fine line in rock and roll. In Guns N' Roses, if you didn't listen to the words in Paradise City, it says Captain America's got a broken heart. This stuff's been happening for a long time, and we were a band of young kids like, screw the man. It's kind of still like that, and I don't want to be another voice out there, a political voice going, you should think this way. F me, I'm another moron. But I do have morals and experience in getting sober and being really effed up and seeing friends of mine die, a lot of them. And it's been such a ride. If it ended tomorrow, I'd be sliding into my grave sideways going, what an effing ride. I never want to be another political voice. We've got enough of that shit, man. He also talked about some of the tracks off his upcoming record and how he tackles issues like opiate abuse. So he's got a song called Falling Down. He said, I've read the book by J.D. Vance called Hillbilly Elegy, and as a guy who's been there being an addiction and alcoholism, I could really relate. I don't want to look at people who are strung out as them. It's a we. I had written a song in 2008 for Loaded called Wasted Heart about a very personal issue with myself. Now, fortunately for me, I have a wife who stood by me and pulled me out. I said, you should have gone a long time ago. Because I'm going to F up, I knew I was going to F this up tomorrow. It was about drugs coming back into my life, and Wasted Heart is this personal side of it, like, I know what I'm talking about, and Falling Down is a writer's view of the problem. I named a particular part of the country, West Virginia, but I could have named Tacoma, Washington, I could have named Seattle, I could have named Riverside or Hollywood. And I think I did a video not too long ago about how drugs and all that stuff kind of screwed up Velvet Revolver in 2005 and how the band almost broke up a year into touring after Contraband. So go check it out if you guys haven't seen it. He also talked about another song called Parkland, which you guys can guess from the title has to do with gun violence. So Duff said, I was down in my basement and this engineer guy came over and he came down to the stairs and he goes, oh shit, have you heard about Parkland? It happened again. He said, I have a TV down in my basement that's never been turned on. So we turned on the news, and at that time I had a junior in high school. We just sat there numb watching. We've seen this happen so many times, and I started playing this B flat chord and this D chord, and it was like a funeral dirge. I go on to name Columbine and Sandy Hook and Virginia Tech and Charleston Church without saying much more than that. Do we have to see another mother cry? Do we have to see another schooled kid die? If that's political, you can F off. It's paying honor to those kids, and we have a daughter who's 18, and all her friends are like those Parkland kids. Like, so together and so aware of what's going on politically and aware that they're the next voters. They're being really active, and I'm watching kids and I'm going, okay, I've got to do something because what did you do when this was going down? So Duff's solo record is coming out on May 31st. It's going to be called Tenderness. And it's basically McKagan's journals over the last 2.5 years touring with Guns N' Roses, talking about everything he went through, including heartbreak, anger, fear, confusion, and divide. And he's producing the record with Shooter Jennings, who's actually going to be his backing band on the record and, of course, on tour. So Duff's tour is going to kick off, at least the North America tour that's been announced, on May 30th at TLA in Philadelphia. So you guys can go to Duff's website if you want to see additional tour dates.